Hey, y'all.
Hey.
What's up?
Finally. How's everybody been?
Good.
I'm well. What's up, Kane?
How you doing, Bama?
Man, I'm hanging in there.
Yeah, good.
Oh my gosh. Hey, everybody in chat. Look, y'all, I'm a nervous wreck. I told you, I said, I'm sweating like a whore in church. It's hot here.
Yeah, hey, everybody in chat. I see Gary and Leanne and Sharon and Christy and a bunch of them on there. There's Joe Parker's on there too. So we already got some people in there.
Diane, Christy, Cashew. Yeah. Hey, everybody. So what have y'all been into?
Oh, not much. I go to church on Sunday, so I had to do that. It's funny because I do security at church, so I carry a gun to church with me. But that's what I do on Sundays. Yeah, I see some people on there.
Didn't your mom have a birthday yesterday, Kane?
Yep, it was her 80th birthday last week. We celebrated it. We got rented out the top of a bar.
That's awesome.
I was fortunate enough to be the guy covering the bar tab for my Irish family for 4 hours. It wasn't too bad. It was fun. It was a good time. I think we had 70 people show up.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a bunch of people too.
Bunch of Irish drinkers.
Yeah.
As soon as I got there at the bar, I looked and they had a bottle of Buffalo Trace, and I was like, can you please hide that? Because that's like, you can't find that in Ohio anywhere. It's like highly sought after. Yeah. I think it was about gone when we left.
I tell you what, I've drank a drink or two that you've mixed, and I'm not surprised that it didn't get gone quick.
Yeah, it was going before it even started.
All right, y'all. So, can you say my signs way before we get started?
People are commenting how they like the sign back there.
Well, Spencer had to take off today in case anybody in here didn't know what was going on. His little girl had a birthday yesterday, and they were celebrating today. So, happy birthday, Amory.
Happy birthday to her.
You suck. So,
somebody was asking where the episode was at where it told why your nickname was Squirrel.
Okay. I don't know if we ever really got into that or not, but what happened was I get so sidetracked so easy. Like, I mean, it don't take much at all. My husband actually has me in his phone as Squirrel. Like, if I call him, it'll show up Squirrel.
Yeah.
Well, my father-in-law, he said, look here, whatever he called him. And he just thought that was the funniest thing ever. So he told Larry whenever they went to LBL with us. And so, Larry finding out about it, it just went from there. So everybody found out about the nickname. So it didn't take long before everybody was calling me Squirrel. So, and who knows where this is going to go today?
I don't know. People
ahead of time, nothing too personal and crazy. I mean, some things get
they wouldn't do that. Our people wouldn't do that, would they?
They would. They definitely would.
I see some of these people in the chat, man. They there's nothing off limits for some of these people.
Yeah. Sorry, y'all. I forgot and left my drink sitting. I've been rushing and running and. All right. Anybody got any questions or anything that you all do want to talk about specifically? Hey, we'll talk about anything yins are willing to talk about. Dogman. Spencer told me to get that out of the way while he wasn't here.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I thought about that. I thought about that myself too.
Yeah.
I don't know that there was something I wanted to bring up since you're on the show here, Misty, and that is the time that how many times have you been to LBL when I was there? I think, was it twice?
Uh,
The,
yeah, it actually
the,
was. Yeah.
the one time when we got froze out with the ice storm, the meet and freeze, and then the Halloween one where I rented out the campground, right?
Yep. It was twice. I didn't even really get to meet you on the first one, you or Kane or Eric, either one, Mark, until the day that we were getting ready to leave. It had just been so cold, and we got there
Mhm.
late. We didn't even make it to the big fire that you guys done, where y'all all kind of sat around and talked and all that. So
Yeah, because that meant everybody was hunkered down, and a lot of people that had heaters in their tent, like Kel had she has one of those, not just a regular heater buddy, but one of those big heater buddies, and she's always making bracelets and beading and stuff like that. And man, her tent was 80 degrees on the inside of that tent. So most people that had heaters and stuff like that was hunkering down because the wind was blowing, not just the cold, but the wind was blowing 35, 40 miles an hour. You would hear it coming off that hillside, and it was roaring when it come down off that hillside.
well, you guys know where we were at, all the way at the far end, down where the water was. We caught every bit of the wind. I stayed up. I mean, I didn't get hardly any sleep at all while we were gone, but I was so afraid that tent was going to either collapse in or knock that heater over. It was blowing in so hard. But
well, I remember when y'all showed up, because none of us knew you when y'all showed up, and you showed up in the Bigfoot mobile with the big thing on the back with the Bigfoot stuff on it. And y'all started unpacking and setting up a big tent, like a 8, 10, 12 person tent.
Yeah.
And we were trying to kind of keep up with people when they showed up, because we did have people showing up that didn't know us or didn't know anybody. And, it's kind of strange walking into a group of people when you really don't know anybody. And so I told Mark or Larry or some of them, I said, man, there's some people just showed up in a Bigfoot mobile down there. They have pictures of Bigfoot on it and everything. And y'all were setting that tent up, and I walked down there, and the first person I noticed was Mr. Jim walking around. So of course I got down there and was talking to him, but the reason I brought that up was that was the first time, not that most of us had camped at that particular spot, but that was the time when we were sitting around the fire. I don't know if many people know this, and Spencer has a really good FLIR. Most of us have pretty decent little FLIRs, but he has a really nice one that when he has the FLIR on, he has an app on his phone, or you can put it on an iPad or whatever, so other people can see what they're looking at through the FLIR. Well, that was the first time that we had saw a big cat at LBL, and you had seen its eyes there one night, and I thought it was funny because you said that's a big cat, and I guess people were like, man, who is this woman? She don't even know what she's talking about. And we had to tell people, we're like, hey man, she bear hunts, she lives in the mountains, she sees stuff like this all the time. The next time we came back for Halloween, when I had rented it out, I camped over at a different spot on the other side. What would you say, maybe 300-400 yards from y'all across a big field. And that cat came around Rodney and Karen Beasley's tent first, and then it went over to Kel's tent, and Moose, my dog, he wasn't in my tent. I was letting him sleep in there with Kel in her tent, and that thing came around Kel's tent, and she's a heavy sleeper, and it woke her up. Rodney said it came around theirs and was purring. I mean, like a domestic cat purred. Kel said when it came around her tent, Yeah, I don't know if it was breathing or sniffing or what, but she goes, I'll never forget what that sounded like. I'm the only one that didn't even hear it. And my tent was literally, our two tents were maybe a couple of 2 or 3 feet from each other. And I never heard anything, but I didn't know if I told that story. I wanted people to hear that because that's something always happens to us when we're camping. I mean,
Yeah.
but never really happens a lot when I'm by myself or 1 or 2 people. But man, when there's a big group of people, we just have stuff happen all the time.
You know what's so funny about that is the second time that we was there, I think it was Shelly said she heard something coming up behind her tent, and Sherry did too. And the next night, Mark, I'd seen eyes again, and he looked, and it was another cat on the FLIR right there, just right at our campsite on our side this time. I'm trying to find the comment. Joe Parker.
We had a fire ban the last time, so we couldn't build a fire. And I mean, they wouldn't even let you make a charcoal fire out there, because they're afraid people would don't. Yeah, it got pretty cool. So when I was over there cooking on, I think a Coleman stove by myself over there, I would hear something walking around on that little. I camped over there because there was a creek over there, but it was dry. The creek was dry. But I would just hear something over there walking around all the time, and a cat's pretty quiet. So I kept moose, pretty close, there by me. But yeah, people don't believe that there's cats there or down here for that matter. But yeah, that's just kind of stuff that happens to us. I'd mentioned that one time. Somebody had asked about it, so I was going to tell about that.
Kane, Joe wants to know if you're still having activity at your house.
Yeah, it's just kicking up. It's the time of the year for it, so just starting to see some recent stuff coming in. So year by year, this is about the time of year where it starts, and there's definitely actually the last video I posted was just I posted yesterday. Some tracking in the woods that was right behind my cabin here. There's some pretty large impressions that I did a little video on. So definitely.
Yeah, I've seen some of the stuff you've been putting out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's big.
And you think that
whatever it is walking around, it's
and you think that's like seasonal. There's just a particular time of the year when they come through there, isn't that right?
Here it's, I've been documented ever since I moved in, and I write all the dates down, the times, and then I save that. And it really is. It's like starts in April, goes into August, and then peters down every year. It's almost like it's just, I don't know if it's something about maybe the food sources in this area or what, but it seems to really start with the foliage. Once the foliage comes in, it's hard to see in the woods, is about when the activity starts. In the winter here, there's you could hear a pin drop out here, and it's just as quiet and dead as dead can be. And then it starts to ramp up when it starts getting warmer.
Can you see that? She said, Sharon said, what's the title of Kane's channel, please?
Oh, it's called House of Enoch on Facebook. ENOCH. There's about 500 videos you can watch.
Yeah.
Sorry, y'all. I'm not sure. I can't read and talk at the same time.
Yeah, he has all kinds of stuff happen up there.
That's neat, Christy. She said Fort Worth's nickname is Panther City. According to folklore, a panther was seen sleeping on the steps of the courthouse back in the 1800s.
Nice.
Christy had mentioned this. Christy had mentioned this, and it's it's somewhere on the Beast Facebook page, but the very first meet and greet we had, she drove down, and of course she got there like in the middle of the night, and in the middle of the night I mean like 3 o'clock in the morning or something. So this is everybody had already gone to bed because it was our first night there, so people just got there and set up. The rest of the nights, a lot of times at 2 or 3 o'clock, we were gone somewhere, out doing calls. But she had showed up and was sleeping in her vehicle like most people do. It was cold then. But there's a video on the Beast page somewhere of people are up having breakfast and stuff, but she's sleeping in because she got in there so late. And I just thought, well, you wanted to come to the land of the Dogman. I said, so here we go. And I went up and I shook her vehicle so hard with her sleeping in it that she had drinks and stuff in there. And those drinks just sloshed and spilled all over the place. And she's inside that vehicle screaming. And I told her, I said, well, you wanted to come, so this is what you get.
That's funny. All right, let's see. Sorry, I'm telling you, I can't look and read at the same time. So, do y'all have anything planned coming up? Like any trips, or what about you, Bama? You got something planned for next week, don't you, on another podcast?
Next week, I don't know if I was telling you that, if you watch, on YouTube, if you watch, Bigfoot stuff like this on YouTube, a lot of times stuff will just pop up. It'll give you suggestions. It's the stuff to watch and stuff like that. And I got onto a lady's channel named Linda Eastburn. And I don't know if any of y'all have found her channel or not, but she covers a lot of different things. She has a lot of Bigfoot stuff on there though. And she doesn't really do her show live like we're doing it here. She'll interview somebody and then she'll edit it and put in photos, and things along that line. And I happened on her a while back, and the one that happened to pop up, and I think I may have shared it on the Beast page, but it was a family, a man and a woman, and they had activity on their property, and they really were open-minded enough to start thinking about, instead of trying to rationalize what it was, they really were open-minded enough to know kind of what they had going on. So they started really documenting, things that would happen, and lots of photos of tracks and stuff. They lived in an area where they have lots of snowfall, and so they could really see how close these things would come to their house, and where the things would walk right by the house and the tracks they were taking. Anyway, so she has, I just want to give a little shout out for her channel. She has a lot of Bigfoot stuff on there, and several people that all of you know have been on the channel. And so I'm going to do her show, I think next Tuesday. I don't know when she'll have that edited and put that out. And honestly, I told her, I said, I can't get on there and talk about how I've had a face-to-face encounter or something like that. I said, but I've had lots of experiences. So I'm glad I'm going to be on her show next week and do that. And, but y'all check her out on YouTube also, Linda Eastburn. And she has some pretty good stuff on there. I know that you're familiar with it, Misty.
Yeah, I've been watching her some here lately. Spencer actually told me about it.
Oh, okay.
So what are you hiding back there, Kane?
This is like Ted Kaczynski's cabin. this is my gear room. So it's got all my hobby stuff, from camping to Bigfoot and to I'm big into artifacts, mycology. It's all packed in this room. This cabin that I have has no closets. I don't know. It's just one of those things with a lot of cabins, I think, are set up for more rentals. So I have to dedicate a whole room just for my gear. So, yeah, there's all kinds of cool stuff in there, though. Yeah.
At least you got the space to do it.
Yeah. It's but I mean, I have my music stuff in here. This is just my room. I store everything in here. There's tons of books, everything you can think of that I hobby, I guess you should say. I'm just trying to get organized. I need a couple more of those shelves, just like what's behind me.
Yeah, I try to get organized and it never happens. It seems like you wind up with more crap once you get organized. So there ain't never enough space. That's the way it is on my craft stuff anyways.
I'm terrible at putting stuff in special locations and then forgetting where I put it. So I got a labeler now, and I got a bunch of stuff that I'm trying to at least have hints of what might be in the box. I do all kinds of crafts too. I do a lot of the primitive living stuff, and I've got just all kinds of crap in here that I'm working on or whatnot. All my research gear.
You're into you said mycology. Do you go out foraging behind your house any?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I do. I love not even mycology, but all kinds of wild edibles and stuff. And since I live here, one thing I'll usually do if I go out, and like right now has been morel season, but when I'm out, I'll look around. Like right now, I know the next mushroom that's just starting to bloom is some oysters. So you start to get into the cycle of the area, what's blooming now as far as edibles and stuff. And then I try to make a habit of grabbing something, whether it's a plant or a mushroom or something that I don't know, and I'll bring it back here and I'll research it just to get more educated on what's out there. And there's all kinds of medicinals and stuff that it's like you're walking on food out there. I feel bad for homeless people. I really do, because they're out there suffering. And if people just had a better understanding of what's there for free, right there, I mean, it sustained thousands and thousands of people, before us. Nature did. And it's all still there. It hasn't disappeared. And that's a huge interest of mine. It's just learning that stuff and trying to know what's out there, what's available. And here, there's thousands of acres, but I mean, this lot right here sits on 750 acres of woods. And so I think it helps on the research too. I mean, to gear for that, I think the more you know what's coming in season, edible wise, might explain why you're having activity. And then the more you get in tune with it, even like you might have a big forest, but really the center of life in the forest really starts with nut bearing trees. The nut bearing trees draw animal life to it, and like squirrels and everything that survives off of those, and then the things that hunt those. And then so there's these little, I call them concentric little circles of life in the woods, and finding those is really where you'll find most of even the animal activity is around these sources, or a spring, anything like that. I think can really help you in your research.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Plus, it's fun too. I get out. I forage in my yard, so in the woods, wherever. So
I love longevity of doing this. I've been doing this over a decade now, but a lot of people always ask me, "How do you not get burnt out?" And I always say, if you're just going out there for a sighting, you're probably going to get burnt out on this, because that's very rare. I can count on one hand possible sightings in 12 years. And the way I sustain myself is because if there's no activity going on Bigfoot wise, I'm either out there artifact hunting, I'm out there foraging. I'm out here because I love it. Like, even if I wasn't researching, I'd still be out there doing these things. So it's a combined hobbies that I'm passionate about. That's what keeps me out here, not just on the weekends, but every night. Every single night I'm out in the woods, depending on whether it's a half hour or 3 hours, but I'm always in the woods no matter what. And it don't have to be. It could be finding a creek and just going through artifact hunting or something. So just being inquisitive and being out there is a huge part of it.
I agree completely. I mean, and the more you know about the area, like you said, that you're in, the more you notice. I mean, until we started mushroom hunting and stuff like that, you don't even realize the stuff that you walk past, that when you start actually looking for stuff and train your eyes to it, that just pops out to you while you're out there just walking around.
Yeah. And it helps me discover new area. Like a couple weekends ago, I was out for 6 hours. I ended up in an area of woods I've never seen in my life, and there looked like there was some activity in those woods. So it's like, I'm going to have to come back here and check that out on a different level. Because I'm either, if I'm mushroom hunting, I'm mushroom hunting. I don't know what's going on around me. Or if I'm tracking, it's the same thing. I'm not really looking. So it's kind of I'll have to go back and put my different ball cap on and hit that area again and kind of, see what might be out there in that regard.
Yeah. I don't think so on the LBL trip. Not anything that I've heard of, Bud, by the way. And David wants to go.
I would like to hit LBL again, just because, we kind of know our way around. It's a lot easier if we're taking people out boogering to split up, because we've had so many people with us the last few times that we've really split up into 2 or 3 different groups, so we kind of know our way around and go where to go. And I like LBL. You just can't help but almost get action, some kind of action up there every time you go. Somebody had mentioned, maybe Debbie Jones had mentioned going somewhere else this time, like maybe Arkansas or somewhere along that line. I don't care. I just wish we could get some good weather. Seems like every time we go, we end up suffering. It ends up, we end up freezing or something like that, or or having a fire ban, or just something goes on every time.
I have to say, though, that last LBL trip that we went on, the one that was the Halloween thing for your birthday, it was cold at night, but now I thought it was pretty comfortable through the day, especially it just wasn't too hot, and it was just almost right.
And we stayed, what did we stay, like 4 nights or something like that? We ended up staying, we stayed a week after that. They wouldn't let you have a fire unless you had some of those established official park fire pit type things. So we moved down to a campground and nobody was there. We knew nobody would be down there at that campground. Camped in the same spot I always camp at. Rodney and Karen Beasley came down with us. I think they stayed an extra 2 nights, but every day we would get up, and the weather was so nice that we'd just go, man, let's just stay another day. And we just kept staying and staying. We stayed so long that we went to the little town there. I forget what the name of the town was that we go into there, but we went and did a load of laundry at a little laundry mat. It's where we all went and had Mexican that night when we all got together that one night. But yeah, we stayed up there probably an extra week, after everybody else already left, just because it was nice. I like staying up there. But I don't know. I hope in the fall we get to get together and have a, a kind of a, I guess we can still call them meet and greets. I don't know how many new people would be coming, but I'd like to do something in the fall when the weather gets a little cooler and the ticks and the mosquitoes and stuff gets knocked down.
I was lucky. I didn't get no ticks on this last trip. How about you, Kane? Did you get ticks?
I don't know. Maybe I did. I have to check every day, so they don't really like me though. It's fine. I don't get a lot of poison ivy, and I rarely get ticks on me for some reason. So I don't know why.
I think Sherry got several.
I've always been pretty lucky, especially at LBL. I mean, we've gone up there and camped out in the woods. I mean, where we would park and walk off just into the woods and camp out right in the middle of the woods. And I've come out without a single tick. And then 3-4 days later, moose, especially around its feet, would just be covered with them because they're so tiny that you can't see them at the time. Those little tiny seed ticks, they're so tiny. And I keep flea and tick stuff on him. But he's always in the water and wading around so much that his feet, it kind of washes off his feet. He doesn't get that much protection. And I sat there one time after an LBL trip with a set of tweezers and a little cup, and I probably took 30 just off of his feet up to maybe his, his first joint. I guess you'd call it his elbow or something, because they were so tiny and you just couldn't see them till they, filled up with blood. Those little tiny seed ticks.
The best thing I found for that is that permethrin spray where you mix it yourself, and it's the concentrated, because you can put it on yourself, your clothes, that you're not supposed to yourself, but I'm gonna tell you, I use it and I never get ticks whenever we go out places like that. I spray my tent down in it. A lot of people will soak their stuff in it. I don't know if you guys do that or not, but it really helps, and it doesn't smell like that DEET. When you've got that real strong odor, when this dries, it doesn't really have a whole lot of odor. But all right, David wants to know any thoughts on Dogman versus Bigfoot interactions.
You mean like them fighting with each other?
I don't know, David. Let's see. You talking about them hanging out, or
let Kane talk about Dogman for a second. We're always joking because Spencer's always like, when you mention Dogman, he's like, no Dogman, no Dogman. It's like Alabama white barbecue sauce. He just don't have much to do with it. But we can talk about it for a minute.
Yeah, I don't do a lot on the Dogman side of things. I have found some prints and stuff that could possibly be that. This one broke, but we're talking about something with claws. If you see that, there's 3 of them. Mm-hmm. I don't know what this is though. I couldn't tell you. But only so far. One time on my property, I found those type of tracks on it. Following, one was either following the other. There was definite Sasquatch trail there, and those were a couple days behind. I just couldn't tell which one was first, but one was following the other. And my one friend Richard has a lot more. He talks about Dogman a lot, and I'm open to it. I just don't. I got my hands full with what I got here, I guess. I mean, I'm definitely open to anything. I don't have that much experience on that to really talk about it, except to just kind of kick it around.
Let's see.
I think Joe's wanting to know, did that track look more like a big giant canine type track with claws, or what?
It
Let
looks
me,
like a fucking pterodactyl claw to me.
I got one. My friend Richard, I'm sure he wouldn't care if I can find it here. This is one. I'll just try to show it on here of the one I was showing you right here. I'm going to show you what a full cast looks like. This is from Richard. I don't know if you can see the 3 claws and the palm part of it. See that well enough?
Mm.
There you go.
Yeah.
So he's got some stuff like that, and that's actually what we were. That's what we were in there to cast when I got this one. That was, like I said, that was actually a 3-toed one, which is exactly this. Over here, I got the other part of it where this cast broke, but he's got, and I don't know. I mean, honestly, we don't know what that is. If it is a Dogman or not.
You solo so you can see it better.
What's that now?
I'm gonna try to. I don't know if this will work. Let's see, just for a second, and see if it'll.
It's a little different angle on it. We make it names for stuff.
Hold on.
Like 3 toes and stuff like that, because that's kind of how we see it. Where are we?
Yeah.
The glare's hard. Let me.
Oh, here we go. There it is.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. I'll go back to the other one because I think it's a little better. Again, this is Richard's full cast. But that's a place we go to. We don't know. It could be something completely different. But that and the prints that I cast here is of a family group that goes through my property. And that's what I'm really into is collecting all the data year after year and learning a little bit about how they live and how they do things. Which, if you document and you go back and you review, there's really a lot of insight just from the tracking and what the time period they come through, the time of day, how they strategize going through the property. We know now we call them like father, mother, juvenile. Father's habits are he's usually really far away from the cabin. He's usually the farthest point, mostly. But I've also got his cast or his prints right up behind, right back here, around the pond. Goes around the pond and comes right up to the back of the yard. Haven't gotten his cast yet, but I do have, I think, a picture I can share of that if I can find it relatively quick. Let's see where I am on my. I apologize. I have like 10,000 pictures, and I try to put them into little. There we go, albums.
While you're looking,
for reference.
Bud said, "Is Kane from Ohio?"
Yes.
Originally.
Yes. Okay, this is pretty easy to see, but I think that's father's.
Hang on just a second.
Yeah. So when we're talking about the alpha,
crazy.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's a giant 24-inch print. That's what I find going across my property. I have not been able to cast it yet, but that's my goal this year. And then this is a juvenile. So when I speak of the juvenile, and then this is what we assume to be mother, is quite a bit bigger than the juvenile. But these are several, multiple casts of the same individuals. And it's mother who comes closest to the cabin. When they cross, the property, mother comes right up close to the carport, and she is obviously probably trying to find out where I'm at. The juvenile is always between mother and father when they cross, and they're about 50 yards apart when they cross. And then father either, you almost get the thought that he's a loner. He's close by, but he's not at least here, he's not the one who's normally closest to the house. It's usually what we're considering his mother. Don't know that. That's just kind of the names that we give those. But then the juvenile is the one that comes back once they cross whatever they're probably considering the danger area. They get up here and they settle in, and it looks like the juvenile is the one that I have interactions with. I know this because I've seen some of the stuff, and it's this print. Now, this print has grown substantially since I first moved in here, but it's the same individual, just getting bigger, which I do have some of those casts back here showing the growth rate of his foot or her foot. I'm not sure which one it is. And the way they signal here, it's a strategic that they'll call to each other, but it's about 10 minutes apart. So it really for a long, long time, I thought that I was hearing just the same individual calling in different parts of the woods. But if you're out there long enough, like I do, a lot of times I just sit out here and I just listen. No, it's a distinct. When I'm saying a call, I should say it's like a knock, a mouth pop, and like something hitting metal. But it's like 10 minutes apart. And if you break that, they automatically know, like that timing or the wrong signal back, automatically know that it's not them. And I did that because one night I was already sitting out there and I heard the wood knock where I normally hear it from. And by this time, I'd already knew that there was a timing, like I already kind of figured that out. So I looked at my phone and I timed it right around 9 minutes. I did a mouth pop, and immediately something come running down the woods behind me and hit my carport. That sounded like a gunshot. Like it knew immediately that was the wrong person intervening in the signal, and like put a stop to that immediately. Wow. And I've now done that enough to where I was a lot of times, I'll get home straight from home. I'll just park my car and I go straight in the woods. I don't even enter the cabin. And when I went out in the woods, there was a four-wheeler somewhere, and you could hear it, driving around. And that's rare for one, but I think it really covered the sound of me going up, tromping in the woods. And I got up in there, and the four-wheeler was actually going down the road. But when it got in front of my cabin, it sounded like it was coming down the driveway. It was just, the perception of it. And as soon as it got loud like that, unbeknownst to me, I hear a giant tree knock close by. So I just dropped right there, and I just sat there and didn't move. And it started that same repetition, like locator calls. It's the same thing, but I think it was alarmed that, for one, that it was like someone was coming down the driveway. I think a lot of times they probably do that. We don't hear it because as we drive up to the woods, we get out of our car, we shut our car doors. They're already there. So if there's anything close by, they already know something's in the area. And I sat there until my legs went numb, and I had to finally move. And it was dark. It was getting dark, and they were doing this, about every 10 minutes. As soon as I stood up, my legs were numb. I kind of tripped a little bit, and it just immediately, the woods went like I don't think they knew I was there that entire time because of the noise covering the sound of me getting up in the woods. And I wasn't up in the woods very far when that happened. But it's just that listening and finding out, like, okay, in my area, this is what I have to listen for. This is the things that I listen for around here that works because I've heard it, and that's, I don't do a lot of calls and stuff. I listen. I listen and I listen for those things here because now I know, like, if I know kind of how they move through the area, and that's how they talk to each other or signal each other or however you want to call it. So that's usually when I'm out here, if it starts actually with the dogs. There's not a lot of people out here for one. So my neighbors are, I think I have less than 10 and 10 miles here. It's all woods. But there are neighbors. They're just farther away, but I always hear their dogs go off. That's usually the first sign. Is like the dogs will start going crazy out in the woods, and then if you just start listening, I'll start hearing these little things as they get to my property, and then I think probably what happens is they triangulate, they get in position, and then I'm going to assume its mother probably comes up close to the cabin, looks to see if the coast is clear, gives a signal, and that tells them. And I think that's how they move. They're very strategic until they get back to where they probably feel more comfortable. And I can tell you this, a lot of the activity areas is almost exactly in between my cabin and the next neighbor. It's like as remote as they can get between those two, dead center. That's where that's kind of where they turn and go on their way.
Does your neighbors have their place lit up a lot?
A lot of people do have booger lights. Yeah, out around here. There's like when I'm here at night and I turn off the lights, you don't see any lights. You cannot see any neighbor lights anywhere. I'm like 6 miles both directions of just woods to the, I guess, west and east, and then north and south is kind of where I have some neighbors, but I'm right in between a bunch of parks. So there's not a lot of roads out here because the roads have to go around the park. So they have to go around the valley. And a couple of people have moved. A lot of these places too are rentals. So there's just not a ton of people out here.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm listening. I don't know if you're even reading the comments over here because I'm trying to scroll through. Let me get us caught up on the comments right quick, guys. That I'm telling you, if y'all really haven't listened to some of the stuff that Kane's got going on at his house, you ought to check it out because, I mean, he literally goes out and researches every day at his place. Okay, somebody said, okay, hold on. Does Kane investigate Hocking Hills, Tar Hollow, and Wayne National? Bud wants to know.
Every bit of it. Tar Hollow is about 30 minutes from here. And as I said, where I live, it's surrounded by about 1 million acres of parks here in southern Ohio. Tar Hollow is about a half hour away. In between those, there's 3. There's Old Man's Cave, which a lot of people have probably heard. Conkle's Hollow, the Rock House, Cantwell Cliffs, Hocking, actually the Hocking County. Wayne National Forest is like 600,000 acres in itself. But it's kind of part of this complex, but it's a giant area of wildlife and hiking and all that stuff. It's right here, kind of the mecca of hiking and stuff for Ohio.
Joe Parker wanted to know if the prints that you had was the ones that you had found in the ditch.
Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah, and that's an interesting story too. That was I've talked briefly about Richard, who's an acquaintance that lives close to me. He's starting to come out of the shadows a lot more now. He's got crazy stories, but he has a military background. He was special forces, and he was a tracker. And I consider myself a very good tracker, and this guy takes me to school a lot. But he is the one that coming out here discovered the tracks in the ditch line. So that they were using, my driveway is probably an eighth of a mile long or so. It winds through the woods to get to my cabin, and there's like a washout area that gets full of leaves and stuff all the way down for drainage. And I had Richard out there, and he's like, have you seen these before? And I've lived here my whole, the time that I've lived here, and never even thought to look in that ditch. And I would find tracks up, in the woods and stuff, but I never really knew how they were coming into the property. So that's what we did. We located those areas, and then all last year I had strings, little threads set up across, a good place to kind of measure this was my driveway, because they have to cross it. And I would just set up these little strings, and every night I would get home and I would check the strings. And sure enough, you would start seeing a pattern to that, then a pattern to like the weird stuff that would happen around here. And then I would try to set up trail cams and stuff, and try to be sneaky on maybe trying to get some kind of picture with either video or trail cams or whatever, which I'm currently still trying. It's hard to do.
It's like they know. Never fails.
Yeah.
Greg said, how big do you think the father is? I don't know if there's let me just get my calculator out. The only way I know how to kind of judge this is there's a ratio 6.6.1, and you could take that to the length of your foot, the inches, and you can calculate like a 0.6. So, well, that didn't work. 6 times 6.1. I mean, if you did the calculations, it could be upwards of 12 foot for the father, which sounds crazy, but like the mother measured, using that ratio about over 9 feet. So I think that's rare. I mean, even Eric and I, all the stuff we did at Salt Fork and stuff, on occasion we would see these giant impressions, and never in a place where we could cast them or anything, but we've known for a long time there's like a big one out there. And now Richard has his cast, and that's the same one. Like, honestly, I didn't even train my eyes to look for something that big. That's something I've had to do. And it's remarkable, some of the stuff where I talk about back here. I have a pond and stuff and a trail. Now that I've trained my eyes to look sometimes for big impressions, you see these giant impressions, and it always comes up to the woods come right up to my cabin. I just have a small little grass space. It's right there. The only time I have seen his tracks there, that's where they've been, like right up to which my bedroom is right above this room here, facing the woods.
So I don't know if that's something to look up there, see if the light's on. Something being watched for sure.
Does it make you nervous to think something might be watching you?
I've had stuff. I mean, honestly,
Pervert squat.
people have stories, and I try not to. I don't want to be the guy that has too many stories and stuff. But I've laid in my bed, been wide awake, and it sounds like something take its finger and hit the window, just bam. And that's the second story window. That's exactly what it sounds like. It's the window for sure, because I'm right there. And that happens. Stuff hits the top of the cabin. Stuff gets moved. I've told people it's like when they're around, it's almost like you think you have ghosts or something. Just the weird stuff that kind of happens when they're around. Stuff will be moved. It'd be like there's a landscaping brick that I have. I didn't even see it, but when one of the guys were over, they're like, "Kane, why is that brick up on that ledge up on the top of your cabin?" I wasn't even aware. Something had taken a brick, and that's up 10 feet. Just put it up on, how the cabins are. They stick out the logs. There's a brick laying up there. Just goofy stuff like that. And then there's obviously a lot of wood sign that I'm into. I mean, I know a lot of people aren't there with it, but I am. When they asked about the summer, has anything started? That's one of the first things that's happened is in the beginning of the season, it appears that they kind of come through. I call it spring cleaning, but they'll go up and they'll put up new structures, different things. And I don't know if that means something different, but I've documented every year that I'm here. Every single year, it's like, for the most part, that was the whatever messages they were leaving for the year. They kind of go through and reassess and maybe play, and you get some other. I can't even tell you that's booger related. I just know I know for a fact it happens.
Okay, I got a question. Do they do it on the same structure? Like, do they add to that, or do they just build whole new ones and just abandon those? I mean,
they do it all. I've seen them take a structure down and put a new structure up in its place. And one thing I don't think a lot of people probably realize is that the bows that get pinned down, if you go back periodically enough through the woods and actually document that, those bows get pinned up, they get pinned down, they get turned. People aren't out in the woods enough to realize that. They just see a pinned tree and they go, "Oh, that's weird. It's pinned down." What they don't realize is that during the course of months, that bow could be either blocking the trail off, it could be back open again. It's something Eric and I have documented years ago. And it's just because you have to get out there enough to see it. I've got just people call them leaners. They'll see sticks leaned up against trees. They take a picture of it or whatever. But if you document that over the long haul, like, over a course of a year, a lot of times those sticks are moving. Sometimes there's 2 sticks. Sometimes there's 3. They're on different trees. That's something that I've documented a lot of. So it's kind of like leaving little messages right under your nose. That's how I look. Like we're not out in the woods enough to see it. But they are, that's their home, and they use that, because they know, whatever that means, but it gets moved around. I've got hundreds of pictures of sticks moving around through the woods that I've documented back at my old property. I did a stint where I was in the woods every single day for 2 years with just a certain part of the woods, and just and just hiking through and taking pictures and documenting. That's all I did.
Wow.
That's the kind of stuff I was finding. You know, the signs were being done right under your nose, and we're just not out there enough to realize that that's being done. You might say, oh, there's those two leaners, but maybe you didn't realize that those two leaners are now on a different tree. You know, so it's really cool.
I know I learned a lot being out with you guys, just the couple of days that we got to go out walking. And after that is when I found what I found in that picture that I'd sent to you all. And I would have never noticed that. It was a small structure type thing. But I wouldn't even have noticed it if it hadn't been, for some of the stuff that you guys had actually helped us with while we were out. And it just blew me away. That's what we were talking about earlier, as far as, the things that you actually get to notice when you get out and do stuff.
Yeah.
And that's like Bama, him being a police officer and things, that really helps too with.
And being curious and being intrigued by things and just curious. That picture you said, I had a one up on the top of my ridge up here, almost exactly what you had. And what's funny is that one was kind of out in the open that was made, but there was a much bigger one in the wood line. And when I see those little ones that are like this, I have that documented too, a lot of what I think is imprinting. It's like the parents are doing something, and then the young ones are down there doing little ones. One of the new ones I found up here this year, there was 3 large sticks and then one little one leaning up against the tree. And it's just like, I wonder if that's this, we're
maybe imitating. Yeah.
Yeah. This little print we found by my pond, got my eyeball out for that, because I couldn't tell whether it was a bear cub or a small baby juvenile. But that was when I casted this, was when we found the 24-inch prints by the pond and the mom. They're all down there. So the chances, I guess where my mind goes is father's down there, and then you got this little one, then you got there's a lot of activity, which I don't want. If I'm talking too much, just let me know.
No, go ahead. I'm trying to. If y'all see me look away and you don't think I'm paying attention, I promise I am. I'm just trying to respond to chat.
One night I was out here, and this happened to me. I think I was out by my barn where I had my fires at, and the first thing I was hearing something out in the woods, and I had to kind of think to myself, I'm like, okay, us researchers, we always say, oh, it might be a Bigfoot out there. Then I thought, no, it could be a bear out there. So I went back in the cabin. I put my gun under, I got my gun. I went back and sat down, and I didn't like where I was sitting because it was behind me. So I went back and I sat facing the woods with my little fire going, and I'm by myself. And then a rock goes right by me, hits the ground. And I'm like, okay. And then rocks start hitting the cabin. Just little rocks, man. I don't, but so I thought, okay, I'm pretty vulnerable out here. So I didn't get scared. I just went, and I went up to my deck closer to the cabin, lights off, put my gun away, and I just sat there like this with my back facing the woods. And I tell you what, something was repeatedly hitting my cabin, little rocks rolling down. But then I heard swishing, like something in my pond, like someone was swimming down there. I didn't get up. I just sat there, and I just kind of let the experience, like, where's this going? And everything kind of died down after that. I went out the next day. There was a sapling, an actual sapling, a tree, laying in my pond. And what was going on was they was taking that sapling, and that was right when all the fish were spawning, and the frogs and stuff, all the gooey. Something was down there with a tree, fishing up, and probably twirling that tree to get all that little stuff and eating it off the branches. And I was fortunate enough to hear that. I know exactly that's what they were doing. So there was one maybe 20 feet behind me that was throwing the rocks, but the situation was comfortable enough. That pond's not too far from where I was sitting. I could hear it going on, and just by not overreacting, just sitting there being cool, being chill, and learning something rather than trying to, normally my instinct is to go pick up my FLIR or whatever. But sometimes just sitting there, you learn something. And that's another thing that happens every year. That spawn, the fish spawn, that's probably a huge resource. But so I try to set up I do have a fountain and lights out there. But I try to set that up to make it comfortable, if they want to do that. I'm a firm believer that there's a lot of stories out there where people live just like this, and they have horror stories of their cabins getting attacked and all these things. And most of those stories eventually get to someone shooting at them. And I'm the opposite. I want to be here. I want to research for the long haul. So I've never ran out. I've been scared, trust me. But I've never went out trying to shoot something or yelling like that. Even when I'm terrified and I'm scared, I've never let myself get that upset where I come out with a gun and start shooting the woods or whatever, because I think you get what you put out there. And what I want is a familiarity. Like, okay, we've tested this guy for a couple of years. He doesn't react too much. He seems pretty safe, and we feel comfortable crossing his property. We feel comfortable being up around him because, I think they've tested me multiple times, throwing things, knocks. If I'm in the backyard, I'll hear a loud knock. Normally, I'll just do this and just do whatever I'm doing. I mean, I heard it, but I don't overreact to that because that's what I want. I want to research for the long haul. And I think eventually I'll be able to get a good FLIR image or something.
I think they can sense too if you're there for the right or the wrong reasons. I mean, I think they know automatically. What about you, Bama? Do you have any activity going on around your house?
No. The closest thing to me is the Sipsey Swamp is down here in Fayette County, Alabama. And that's less than a mile away. What's funny is I told somebody, I don't know exactly how this conversation started, but a few weeks ago, maybe it's been within the month, I had gone to church on Sunday morning and had got there a little early. And the only people there was our preacher or pastor, and there's a guy there that does the audio visual stuff. The sound and the stuff they put up on the screen and stuff like that. And so I'm standing there talking to them, and one of them had a coffee cup. The preacher had a coffee cup, and he said, "You'll like this." He goes, "When you pour hot liquid in this cup," he goes, "it changes color, and there's a Bigfoot on the cup." And I thought, man, that's really neat. I said, "Where did you get that?" He goes, "Well, he gave it to me." And the man's name is Wes. And when you pour liquid into the cup and it heats up, it says, it has a picture of Bigfoot on the cup, and it says, "Bigfoot lives in Fayette, Alabama." And that's the city that's in the county down here. And I thought, that's kind of neat. And so I looked at him, And I said, I said, I forgot what I said. I said, well, you must be a believer or a knower. I just said something like that to him. And he was dead serious. He goes, oh, he goes, I know. I know. So we had a little conversation maybe for about 10 minutes before anybody got there. And uh, he's part Cherokee, Cherokee so much that his Bible is written in Cherokee. And he told me, he goes, I think that he goes, I've got him on my property and the property behind me. And I said, really? I said, how do you think so? He goes, well, he goes, I have a shop that I work in. He goes, and I have a bunch of outdoor cats, barn cats and stuff. He goes, but I'm telling you, he goes, there's times when I just know something is watching me. He goes, I know when something's watching me. He goes, a lot of times then I'll look at the cats. He goes, and all the cats will be bunched up together and they'll be looking up into the woods. So we're kind of having this conversation. And of course, I didn't get to talk to him after that because church had started. Well, then they had a birthday party for our preacher at a home close to here. And he happened to be there. So they had barbecue and, lots of people were there. Well, him and I just happened to sit down close to each other. He, I, the preacher, and another man that goes to church with us that lives close to the Sipsey Swamp over here. And I asked him, I said, well, what's behind your place? And he goes, well, there's nothing but woods back there. He goes, but it does back up to a lot of the land back there is leased for hunting. And I said, has anybody ever told you anything that's going on back there? And he goes, well, they have told me that, and this is the reason that Greg Howes and I were talking about this on the other show the other night. He said they have talked about how they've killed deer and went and checked them dead and turned around and came back and the deer be gone. No drag marks, no blood drag, no anything. And the deer be gone. And I said, well, how many times you think that's happened? He goes, they said it's happened a few times. Well, we're kind of just having this, we got into this conversation with each other and kind of got enthralled with speaking to each other. And we kind of forgot everybody else was sitting around with us. All these people from church are sitting around. So they start listening and they're just sitting there listening to our stories. And I kind of got off onto, when he got to talking about that, of course, I mentioned it's a documentary that I love. If y'all haven't seen this, you need to watch it. I'm always, putting this out there to people, but it's the Missing 411, The Hunted. And it's the Missing 411 documentary, David Paulides. I've done one of his cases. I did a whole show on one of his cases off of this documentary, but it's specifically about hunters that go missing, under very similar and strange circumstances.
Yeah.
So we kind of got to talking about that for a second because I was asking him, have you ever watched this show before? So I'm telling him about this. All to say, the other guy that's sitting there, he is somebody I met when I first moved back down here. So I've known him several months. And somebody said, have you ever been out to his property? And the only time I've been out to his property was we had a sunrise Easter service there back this past Easter. So we were there before daylight. They said, well, he has one of those big giant Bigfoot silhouettes, nailed up to his cabin over there. And I said, well, I didn't notice that. And he's sitting there with us while we're having the conversation. And I noticed as I was leaving his place that morning from the sunrise service, he has cabins out there, a huge lake. It looks like a park out there. It's so beautiful, the way it's mowed and the way the grounds are made out there. And as we're leaving, I got to looking around and just looking at the woods as we were leaving. And he's surrounded by a lot of the Sipsey Swamp down there. And the Sipsey Swamp here is almost the Sipsey runs down through the Bankhead National Forest in northwest Alabama, and it works its way all the way down here to this area. And this area is really low lying down here, so much so that Fayette, Alabama, the town of Fayette itself, was originally named Frog Level, Alabama. That was the name of the town down here because it's so low down here that there's so much swamp down here. And I got to noticing as I was leaving his place, a lot of the swamp surrounding his place. And with it dry back around Easter, I was just looking at these river banks and creek banks and all the mud and huge mud flats and stuff out across there. And I told Kel as we were driving back, I said, man, I've got to find somebody who can take me, down into these areas over here, guys that know the areas, guys that hunt the areas, because I've had people tell me stories coming out of the Sipsey Swamp down here where they've run up on giant human-like footprints in the swamp and stuff like that. So, but I thought that was neat to run into him and start that conversation. I think that a lot of us were so used to getting ridiculed or made fun of or criticized when you talk about Bigfoot or something like that. I mean, it really is. It's either really in your head or on your radar, or it's just not at all. It's like there's not any middle ground. You're either into it or you're just not into it.
Yeah.
And I'm probably like y'all, or y'all are probably like I am. I think about something to do with it every single day. I mean, I think about something to do with it every day. I'm always trying to rationalize stuff and figure, stuff out. And what's weird, something to add to something that Kane was talking about a minute ago, the first time that Spencer and I met was at Land Between the Lakes. And like I've told the story a bunch of times, it's the first time we all met with Larry and Debbie and Mark and Shelley. And Spencer and I just literally met for the first time on just a nondescript road in the middle of LBL and stopped and got out of our vehicles and shook hands. We were just told to go to a certain spot, and that's where we ended up meeting at. And we walked into the woods. Within 30 minutes of us being there, we walked into the woods. We were asked to meet at a particular spot for a particular reason, but they didn't tell Spencer and I that. Just let me say that. They put us in the middle of a hot area, and they just didn't tell us where we were at. Yeah. They had us camping in a very active area, but they just didn't tell us that. So Spencer and I, just while waiting for them, walked up into the woods, and his mind is way more attuned to looking for stick structures and manipulations and stuff like that than mine is. Because really, when we got up into the woods, I was looking at deer sign and hog sign and things along that line. And Spencer's a type that, and you have to train your brain to do this. He's the type that he was just seeing stuff to make fires out of, gathering fire, making tinder. That's just the way his mind works, and picking up tree structures and stick manipulations and things along that line. And once he points it out to you, or anybody points it out to you, and you look at it, then you realize, well, yes, it is. That's kind of strange how this has been over and pinned down to the ground with something else, or you get to looking at something small, and you get to thinking, well, there's no way that these things weave together naturally or grew together like that naturally. So, and my mind just is not wired that way. When I get in the woods, I don't know why. I don't, I can't get myself to think that way. But, I forgot how I got off on that, but,
Squirrel.
yeah, yeah, but, but yeah, I haven't surprisingly, I haven't done a whole lot since I've got back down here. Prior to coming down here, I was getting stories from, like I said, I really got stories from people that you wouldn't think had anything to ever do with Bigfoot. And I had heard stories from childhood friends, and I wondered, why in the world didn't they just tell us these things when we were kids? Things like, I had 4 people I know that were on a double date. They had a roadside crossing. I had a friend I graduated. I went through 12 years of school with him, same classroom. He was in law enforcement his whole life. He, told me about stopping to relieve himself on a dirt road while he was working one night, and something literally just ran up on him right up to his back. And he said that he took 2 steps. He didn't stop what he was doing and just took 2 steps and got into the vehicle and drove off. Said he was absolutely terrified to even turn around and see what was going on. He said he was just gone. And the other thing, and I'd really like to get back in touch with this guy and his family. I got to travel when I was still up in Tennessee. Through these childhood friends, I had a man whose family lived on the same property. Grandparents, great grandparents, stuff like that, in an adjoining county here, and they just had them on their property as long as they can remember. To the point to where, he told the story. I think he was told this story by his grandparents or something along that line, that somehow a juvenile Bigfoot had got into the what we would consider a basement of their house and got trapped in there. I guess the door just closed behind it or something, and they said the thing just tore up the basement before it finally took the door off of the basement to get out, and they saw it take off and run off into the woods, among all the other things that they've seen there.
Wow.
And that's all in one area. I went over and took loads of pictures. I put that on our Beast page. Spent the day with him, heard lots and lots of stories. The way he plants his garden now differently than the way he used to. But as far as he goes, I'll say this last thing just because this is funny. He had a relative step out on their porch at night, and this was funny the way he told it. But they stepped outside to have smoke, and she was standing out there smoking, and she looked way across the yard, and she thought to herself, why in the world has somebody left that white sheet on the clothesline out there with it turning night? The dew's going to fall on it. And she stepped down off the deck to go across the yard to get this white sheet off the line, and the sheet turned and took off running into the woods. So they had actually had a white one on their property at one time or the other. And this isn't the famous Alabama white thing that people talk about down here. But every family member that they have had seen them, whether it was just crossing the road close to their house or while they're in the woods cutting poles to stake tomatoes or stuff for their garden. But, a lot of stuff going on down here. It seems like every time we go over to my mom's house, uh, you know, the thing that we get over there is trees being pushed down a lot. I mean, if we're sitting outside at night, man, you'll hear a tree come down. But I've heard some during the daytime, a couple of big ones. No wind, no anything. And I mean, when they come down, you hear them crack, 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 boom. And Kel and I have went and looked for those things, you know, to try to figure out where they've come down at. But you know, that's the big thing over there. And they're kind of on a little island of about 80 acres of hardwoods because they've logged everything around them. So everything else around them is, you know, now pine trees, you know, I'd say, you know, pine trees, yay big, that all look exactly the same, you know, just growing up for acres and acres. But there's definitely stories down here. I really want to find someone that knows the Sipsey Swamp really well, that maybe leases and hunts in there, and have them take me back in there, because I've tried to think of spots around here, knowing the roads that I know, to where I could just kind of go off and maybe do some calls at night. But I know that I would encounter a vehicle, or I know I would eventually encounter, you know, somebody. But that's just, you know, I think there's lots of things goes on around down here. I thought about this little town down here has a tiny little newspaper, and the ads are incredibly cheap, because we put a really big ad in the newspaper for Kel when we moved down here, because she is a hairstylist. So we put a big ad in the paper with her picture and all that, to, you know, so she could get business. And I thought about putting something in the paper down here about if you've ever seen a Bigfoot or think you've seen anything strange, you know, there's no telling what I would get back there.
You know, Dark Waters actually does that. I don't know if any of y'all listen to his podcast or not, but
I have.
I do. And he actually puts stuff like that out to get Dogman stories. Okay, Pat's got a question, but guys, I want to go ahead and say it's going on right at an hour and a half. We'll stay on here as long as y'all want, but I figured get ready to go ahead and wrap it up and get everybody, if they've got any questions that y'all want to ask, go ahead and get them put up, please. But let's see. Blue Eyed Northern wants to know, Bama, do you know anything about the meadow?
I do not. I'm sorry. I have no idea what she's talking about. I may have to look into that. I'll say this. When I came down here, I found a Facebook group for the Bankhead National Forest, and it's a hunting group for the Bankhead National Forest and something else. There's another area that's right there close to it. The Bankhead National Forest and a Black Warrior area, which is the Black Warrior's a river that Black Warrior River runs through here. And I put some of this on our Facebook page, but I just kind of did a post one day, and I tried to be very respectful about it. And I said, if anyone has maybe seen anything or heard anything that they can't explain or something, would you please let me know? And I said, you know, and I basically said, I know that I respect hunters, and I realize that they see and they hear things, and they're a lot better at identifying things than most people are. And the reason that I even put that request on there is somebody posted a footprint on their page, and they just posted a footprint, a really nice print with very discernible toes on the print. And the only comment that they put under it was, a little cold to be walking around out here barefoot this time of year, don't you think? Or something like that. So, of course, I put that request out, and I got a lot of really bad stuff back, and profane stuff, and lots of wisecracks and stuff like that. But there was lots of other stories that came back to where they would just send me an IM on Facebook about stuff that happened to them, and while they were in a tree stand, or things they'd seen. And there's actually a couple of guys that said there's 2 or 3 men that are older men that have lived there their whole life. You've got to get in touch with these men and talk to these men. And I never have been able to get in touch with some of these guys, but I have made some contacts up that way. One time on the way just down to Alabama, I was up around that way, and I stopped at a barbecue place to eat, and a Jeep circled the restaurant that had loads of Bigfoot stickers and stuff all over. And I literally just jumped up out of the restaurant and ran out in the parking lot and stopped this guy. So it's a wonder I didn't get shot when I ran up to his.
I think that was right after the LBL trip, wasn't it? When we had done left and you guys were still there camping.
Yeah. And just ran right up to the guy. And since then, he listens to our shows. I'll see him in the chat every once in a while. And but he has lots of contacts up there and stuff also. So I'd like to do a little more, stuff down here. I'm really waiting on summer to pass. And Alabama's horrible for ticks and dang cottonmouths and copperheads.
And we've seen 4 in one day here, just right at the pond. Most snakes I think we've seen here in a while, just already out.
Yeah. That's one thing that's funny about it. Well, LBL is when we're riding around at night. And I think the one time when Spencer and just a few of us were there was in late May. And it was rough. And even in May, it was rough there. And, we get out on those paved roads and stop and sit a while and then get out and do calls. And sometimes when you're on those paved roads, you'll walk up and down the road, a few hundred yards, quarter of a mile, just listening and stuff. When you get in your vehicle and turn your lights on and start driving, you realize how many copperheads are laid up on those paved roads at night because the roads are warm. They're out there trying to soak up heat to digest stuff. And so I've got to where, man, when it's warm like that, I don't even hardly feel safe walking up and down the road like that. I wouldn't want to get popped by one of them.
I'm bad about not paying no attention, just walking around barefoot down here at the creek. I got to stop that.
That's the way I am. And, when we were there in May at LBL, I told you, we camped right out in the middle of the woods close to a creek. And I was walking in there wearing shorts and low top shoes the whole time. I mean, we got to where we walked in and out of the same spot so much that we wouldn't even turn on a flashlight going in there at night. And it's a wonder one of us hadn't been popped already by one of them.
Oh gosh, y'all are crazy. All right, y'all. Yin's got anything in particular you want to talk about before we go? I mean, you got anything you want to say or whatever? Like any little juicy details about anything you want to give away while we're on here?
I don't. I thought, we kind of joked that we would talk about the Dogman since Spencer wasn't on here, but we really just don't, I've been to the LBL, the Beast of LBL kill site before. Spencer's been there. We've been there at the same time together. I've been there several times. We've been to the supposed tree where the little girl's body was deposited at. And also, if y'all know Martin Groves, he had a I started to say supposedly, I believe Mr. Groves, he had a Dogman encounter at LBL and even wrote a book about it. And he and I text back and forth and stuff like that. If anybody ever has anything that they want to know about that, I think one of the best people to speak to about Dogman type stuff is a guy named Elijah Henderson. And Elijah's been on our show before a long time ago, and his dad was on with him, and his dad has since passed away. And a lot of people know who I'm talking about. He's been on documentaries. He has done a lot of documentaries himself where he films lots of stuff. He's up there a lot at night. And I'm not sure that he hasn't said that he's had, encounters with them before. I don't think that Spencer, I don't know if Spencer even believes it or not, and I don't know what to think about it. I've spent a lot of
I think
spent a lot of time at LBL. I've camped out up there alone a lot. That's what's odd, is there's so much stuff and credibility to LBL. We know there's just boogers. We know it's booger infested up there. But when I first was up there camping and hunting and fishing before I kind of got ran out of my campsite, I really was more afraid or nervous camping alone there then. Now that I'm into the subject a lot more, I really will camp up there sometimes alone, and I'm not as afraid for some reason. Even though now I kind of know that they're there, I will hear things now that I didn't notice before. And the place where I camp at, I always hear tree breaks or knocks there. I mean, discernible, loud stuff that it has to be something. But yeah, I don't know why. I think I should probably be more cautious and more afraid than I am, especially up at LBL.
It's fun up there though. And I mean, you go to places that are scary and then you go to places like LBL. And I have been at LBL and literally been absolutely terrified whenever Mark and I were walking alone down this gravel road. I mean, it was a really scary feeling. But that was the only time I can ever, and I even heard my daughter hollering for me that night, and she even wasn't. So it was really, really weird. And we got pictures of like light streaks, almost like light rods and things like that. But for the most part, when you go to LBL, it's just a good boogering experience. I mean, you get out and it doesn't seem scary, but
it's the only time that you get scared is it seems like you'll get an irrational fear come over you all of a sudden. And I've had that before, to where I've gone to camp by myself and literally be unloading stuff and all of a sudden just go, man, I don't feel like I belong here. I need to get out of here and go somewhere else. And then when you get to a different spot, it's just a whole different feeling. The particular campground that we use up there a lot, which I like, I always camp in the exact same spot every time I go. I catch myself, and it's really cause Moose is with me. I catch myself, I'll just take off walking down that dirt road at night with the dog, and really I'll get out there a long ways before I realize that maybe I shouldn't be walking around out here by myself, at night. Just maybe I shouldn't be out here by myself walking around. I've never had anything big happen, and I hope I don't. But you're right. LBL's either really on or it's not. We get lots and lots of action there. We get lots of action at the same exact spots, which I don't know if that's normal or not. But we have some spots that if we really want to get into something, we can go to those spots, and man, over 50% of the time we get something at those particular places that we go to. Some of the places we've taken you to. But anyway.
All right, y'all. Last question. Have you guys been to Brown Springs in Oklahoma?
Been to
I
Devil's
have not.
Canyon, but I think that's Arkansas, isn't it?
Just don't ask me.
Broken Arrow. Been to Broken Arrow, and I think that same trip I was at Devil, and me and Eric hiked through Devil's Canyon. But no, I'm not sure of that area. Going back to the Dogman subject, I've got Richard I reference a lot. He's probably got the best, most comprehensive evidence I've seen on the subject. He's got a lot. He's got a lot of pictures. He's got a lot of video surveillance. He's got casts. The biggest thing with that is it's really his story to tell. And several years ago, he called me, and I'm trying to help him verify the evidence that he has. And if he ever comes out with it, I mean, he's got some pretty clear pictures. He's got surveillance. He's got from his place. So I'm definitely don't discount that as a very serious possibility. I just, I told him what I would do is, I'll go out with him and if I can help him back up his claims and stuff that he's got, I'll more than happy to do that. So there's the people, it's kind of the same thing. People sit on evidence that they have because they don't want to be ridiculed. And then something Bama touched on that I'm a firm believer in, like when you talk to LBL and camping and stuff. I think there's areas where we're expected to they expect to see us. Certain campsites, trails, stuff like that. They sit up there and they watch people. Mm-hmm. And Eric and I, one thing that really helped us get more reaction is we went off trail. That's all we've ever done. So it was my thought that they see people hiking on these trails daily in a lot of the popular places or camping in campgrounds. Then you'll have activity around it, but you're kind of expected to be there. I think sometimes what causes alarm is when you're 3 ridges over from the trail and you pop up and you're heading right towards a clan or something. It really appears like that will initiate a response really quick, probably because they're startled, like where these guys come from.
Yeah.
And I believe it's the same thing with the where we camp. I think sometimes, and maybe some of the missing 401 people, they just did not realize because they didn't know that you're in an area that you should not be in. And that's why I talk a lot about the Native Americans, how they describe their wild brothers as the Seatco. And the Seatco, they described them as not having homes and not using fire and kind of like wild Indians. But another term for that is stick Indians. And I believe a lot of that, why they got that name, I believe back then, I mean, why else would you call someone a stick Indians unless they were using sticks to maybe show territorial signs and stuff. And back then they realized that's what it was and be like, oh, let's stay out of that's the Seacoast area or whatever. And then obviously time progressed. Everyone moved out of the woods, including the natives. And that knowledge has been forgotten. So here this whole time, this race of whatever you want to call them have been doing the same thing, leaving boundaries and stuff and signs. And we lost that knowledge. So there could have been a giant warning and someone wander off into go pee or something off the trail.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, they're a missing person, because they don't realize that we have forgotten their signs or whatever. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. And also, I'm really into like the native cultures and the mounds. I think there's a lot to do. Like literally, the name of my, if you want to call, I don't live in a town, but my area is named after a mound. There's a mound from walking distance from here, and there's, I live in the mountain culture. And I think it was Kumbo one time I was talking about that. Why did people? Where did the natives congregate at? They congregated at the best areas where there's resources. The best resources, they fought for that land, and that's where they, would support thousands of people. And then over time, the Indians get dispersed, and then there's this prime land full of resources, and they move in. And that's why there's a lot of activity around mound sites and stuff like that, where native culture used to be, because it's prime land, and a lot of that area across the country has been preserved. So, and a lot of it's ancient forests. Ancient forests produce a lot more edibles and stuff than just fresh cut forests. So I think all that kind of has something to do with the subject.
Do you know if anybody's ever, I forget what it's called, but like the ground penetrating radars, has anybody ever like gone over any of the mounds over there with anything like that to see if there's anything?
I wish they would. My aunt, I was just at my mother's party yesterday. My aunt lives in a place called Plain City, Ohio. And she owns a farm out there, and she was just telling me there's a step pyramid type mound that she they don't talk about it. She knows exactly where it's at. It's kind of hard to get to because it's on private land, but she's been for several years now been trying to find someone to take her back, because everybody knows it's there, but for really reasons, I think, of they keep it really quiet because businesses are building out that way, and they don't, that'll put a stop to it's an undiscovered step mound. And I told her, I was like, that sucks, because that's robbing people of the heritage of that area.
Yeah, and the history and everything.
Yeah. And I look around some of these, I'm in the foothills of the Appalachia here, and I sometimes wonder, I'm like, are these really foothills, or is there, something covered? And I get that, because I've had an excursion with the Mayans in the Yucatan Peninsula. And we climbed Copa, the tallest pyramid structure in Mexico. And I'm talking with this guy, my guide, and he's like, do you see, you can see all the way to the ocean. He goes, you see all those mountains? And I said, yeah. And he's like, the Yucatan Peninsula is flat. There are no mountains. Those are cities. Mm-hmm. Those are undiscovered cities as far as your eye can see. And he's like, and the reason, he's like, people don't realize the scale where we were at. And Copa was the size of New York. He's like, you can stay here for a week and I can't show you. This was a city, a giant metropolis back then. And there's paved roads through the jungle. And he's like, it probably take 100 years to get just some of this discovered. And so I don't know. I think that you could have that here even. I think the Mammoth Cave system's probably got a lot to offer with where they go, what's going on, the mines, something's. I can only speak from my experience. I don't know. I've had experiences in the winter, for sure. I just know here during the winter, it's nothing's here, and then in the spring, things come back, and they're here through the course of the summer, and by October it gets quiet again.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, it's almost 2 hours. I appreciate y'all coming on. This has been fun. We could just keep doing this if you want to, but I'm sure.
Just
Y'all are probably ready to go. I've kept you long enough.
Spencer.
And I'll tell you, thank you guys, everybody who, came and talked to us and asked questions and showed up. And Spencer's going to be so mad at you, Kane, by the way, for, coming on for me and not him. But,
The only reason I did it.
I tried to tell him you like me better.
Oh, Spencer. I love him.
Oh, and Bam, I swear, thank you too. It's been fun.
Yeah,
Y'all
thanks to
awesome stories.
Thanks to everybody in the chat.
Yes.
We always talk about how they're like our family. On the days and nights when we have shows, we know we're going to have the same people show up, and sometimes we have new people show up. So I really appreciate it.
Yes, it's been fun. And I'll tell you, I'll have to get you back on here again without Spencer. That way we can do this again, because I know, there is so much that you all could tell. And it's just, you can't get enough time in a day, as much as you guys have done this stuff, to, for one person, let alone two. But I just wanted to kind of mix it up a little bit. And it's been really fun and really awesome, because, you guys kind of got different backgrounds on stuff, the way you do stuff, the way you think on stuff. And
he's forgot more stuff than I know. I know that. Next time we'll get on here and just talk, about some of the weird stuff. I told you that, you remember, at LBL, we started using stuff like EMF meters and spirit boxes and stuff. And we've seen lights, we've seen orbs. We've just had all kinds of stuff happening there. Greg House was joking about how, I always joke and say that, I always joke and say that, hey, if you go to LBL, you're going to end up in a cemetery sometime. And Greg House was joking about how, man, I'm not getting involved in a cemetery or no haints, as he calls them. But yeah, we'll talk about that sometime too.
Yeah.
Because the majority of our time spent at LBL spent, standing in a gloomy, pitch black cemetery at night.
Sherry, you're not supposed to say that you miss Spencer. That's not. You can't let him know that anybody missed him today. I already had to call him and get how to do this. Oh, wait, hold on, though. Billy said, look, Spencer who? That's right, Billy.
And look at y'all. Tell Mr. Jim I said, hey.
Yeah.
Yes. Sherry said, I love Spencer. Yeah. Whatever. We know you do, Sherry. It's all right. All right, y'all. Remember who we support. Everybody. I'm not going to go through all of them. I know I'm going to forget somebody. Mark and Rebecca Green, Chris Reinhardt, Kane, obviously. Let's see. Kyle with Encrypted Connections. Anti-Haint Fallen. Sorry. I'm trying to read and still talk at the same time. But Bigfoot Lake. And let's see. What is it, Mark? Trying to think. Cedar Creek Bottoms Farmstead. There we go. That is a tongue twister, y'all. Yeah. That's a mouthful of words.
That's Mark Green's channel.
Them out. I'm telling you, if you booger or farm or garden or do anything like that, these people do everything, and they've got a wealth of knowledge about everything that they do. They're just country folk like we are, and they got a good show. Go check them out, seriously. But y'all, thanks again. I really appreciate everybody, and I appreciate everybody that came on. So until next time, y'all. Bye.
See y'all. Night.
Still